Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
What is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. Today's episode is presented by Golf Dojo. Your space, your time, your game. Bring your game to Golf Dojo, Western New York's best indoor golf experience. Visit mygolfdojo.com. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, for watching, for listening, following, subscribing. I do appreciate you all very, very much. This is episode, I don't know what the hell, 850 something. Lost count at this point, but it is our Friday episode. Buffalo Bills camp has concluded. Going to talk about that. Some things to look forward to for Saturday's game. Plenty more. And I'm joined right now by my good buddy, a recurring guest. Been a few weeks. Glad to have him back, man. Just doesn't feel the same when he's not on the show. Anthony Marino, what's going on, dude? How you doing?
Hey, man, it's good to be back with you. Glad we got our schedules figured out and good to connect. So,
how dare you have real life issues that could prevent you from podcasting? Don't you know that podcasting comes before work, family, anything else? Come on, man.
It's always but it's funny. I mean, obviously we had a miscommunication earlier in the week with our timing. You were talking about it on the show earlier. I wasn't sure if you were going to say something or not.
I'm going to.
Doing the Thursday night thing, last day of training camp, that works pretty well too.
So for people who missed the show, it was Tuesday's show. I've been doing this now, like I said, for 6.5 years. I've done a lot of dumb shit over the course of these 6.5 years. I've done shows where I didn't record. I realized that the recording wasn't even happening. This was when it would be audio now. Now it's video, so I'd be able to pull it off worst case. But when it was audio only, there's been a couple episodes where I forgot to record. I've had various screw-ups. But the one thing I've never done until Monday is have a complete miscommunication, which was 100% my fault. So Anthony and I were talking, and previously it used to be Anthony would, for the most part, most weeks, we would tape at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. We would drop the show on Tuesday. During the offseason, that's really easy to do because there's just not a lot going on. You get to this time of year, though, training camp practices to cover, injuries, coaches speaking every day, things go down. So it's really tough to record something. So anyway, we had something set, and Anthony and we DM'd each other, and you were like 4:30. I'm like, all right, cool. For some reason, I thought it was 7:30. I wrote it down in my calendar and everything, and then it's like 4:45, 5 o'clock, and it's like, everything all right? Where are you at? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we don't got a show for another couple hours. And yeah, I screwed up. Long story short here, folks. I wrote down the wrong time, so no Anthony, for Tuesday's show. But whatever, man. You are here today. It's good to have you back on, man. I love talking Bills with you, and kind of got a lot to get to. Training camp's over. I was at Rochester on Thursday here for the final practice. Got a chance to get to 3 of the last 5 practices. So pretty good gauge of what's going on. Let's start here. We'll dive right in. Are you surprised? Sean McDermott spoke. I think maybe the biggest story from Thursday at Bills camp isn't the practice itself, and we'll talk. I got some thoughts on that. But Sean McDermott held court with the media before practice and announced that the starters are slated to play at least like around a quarter against Chicago. If you had asked me this 24 hours ago, I would have bet my life. I'm like, starters ain't playing. Maybe not at all, and certainly not against Chicago to open up the preseason. Were you surprised to learn today being Thursday, that the starters, including Josh Allen, are going to play?
No, I wasn't surprised. And I think, McDermott is that type that he puts a value on things of having a run through, right? Going through just whatever like that game day experience is going to be like for you. And I know Josh Allen had said something of just like, hey, I think I'm at this point, maybe I don't need to play in the preseason. And I totally get that part too. But I think for McDermott, it's like with this game, get him out there. What's your pregame routine going to be like? And people might hate this take, but I kind of agree with Sean McDermott. You have so many new pieces to your offense of just like, listen, going in the locker room and getting ready and coming out for your pregame routine. And what do things look like? Just whatever, right? Like, I know he is a creature of habit, so I'm not really surprised by it. And I'm, knock on wood, I'm okay with it, right? Like, don't do anything stupid. If the offense or defense are out there and they have a good series, like, you want to pull them out, then pull them out. So, but I guess I'm not too surprised by it.
I think I am. Well, I am for a lot of reasons. Number one, I thought maybe if the starters played, it would be week 2. Also, based on what, to your point, the way Josh Allen was talking on Wednesday, I'm like, this dude ain't playing, man. I don't think he's going to play at all. So I was wrong about that. But also, in hindsight, sometimes when something goes down, you don't think of it at the time, but then you're like, I should have thought of that. Then it would make more sense. I kind of got that feeling today after Sean said that. One reason why the Bills maybe should play their starters right off the bat is because of all the new players, but specifically a thing we are not talking a lot about, and that's center. You got a new center, Connor McGovern. You probably want to get him some snaps with Josh Allen in actual real game action against another opponent. Not really something I thought of beforehand. David Edwards, he's starting at guard, but he's done that before. You know what I mean? But yeah. Connor McGovern at center, we're talking about all the new receivers and, other pieces to this offense, but none of them are bigger than the center. They say the center and the quarterback are the two that handle the ball every snap. So in hindsight, I should have probably thought of that. Maybe if I would have thought of Connor McGovern, would have made more sense.
No, and that's a good point. And honestly, like, listen, early in training camp, it seemed like, almost each day there was a little bit of a red flag with the exchange from Connor McGovern to Josh Allen. That seems to have cooled off at this point, but that's a great point you bring up. And hopefully it's something that, again, no issues and nothing we really have to talk about this season.
So the injury list to end camp, pretty lengthy. Sean said most, if not all, these players will not be playing on Saturday. I'll say this. I mean, they got through camp. Camp's over now. So they avoided the dreaded major injury. And by major injury, I'm talking like some teams have already had starters go down with torn ACLs and they're out for the season. The Bills avoided something like that. Cole Bishop, the most serious injury at camp. There's reports that it's with a scapula now, which there are unconfirmed reports. A team or, no major person has confirmed that. But if so, it would be probably like a 6 to 8 week injury, which would have him in line to miss the start of the season if that's true. But regardless, the Bills' current injury list, pretty lengthy. Daquan Jones did not practice. Monday, he had a veteran rest day, which I was at practice on Monday. Not a big deal. But then he didn't practice again on Wednesday, and now today being Thursday because of a groin. So anyway, he's got a groin issue. Nick Morrow, a new addition, has missed a lot of time. He's on the injured list. Chase Claypool still out with a toe. He's really, he's a corny phrase. He's got to shot himself in the toe by having a toe injury right now. I did watch him. He was off to the side. Him, Olafoshio, and Ty Johnson were doing a lot of agility drills. Looks like he's close to coming back. But anyway, he's not going to play. Ty Johnson, someone I just mentioned, he's been out for a lot of camp. Justin Shorter, I like him, man. He just can't stay on the field. He can't get on the field. And he wasn't doing agility work on the side either. He was just riding a bike. So he don't even look like he's that close. And then a couple new ones. Matt Collins, he's got a foot injury. So he didn't practice today. He's probably not going to play Saturday. And KJ Hamler's had a really good camp and an opportunity to be the kick returner. His injury was not disclosed on Thursday, but same kind of deal with him. And it's a pretty long laundry list right now, and not major injury. And then of course Cole Bishop and stuff like that, but pretty long injury list for the Bills here before we even get to preseason game number 1.
Yeah, but you know what? We're a month away from the start of the regular season. So, when you look at that, and it is weird, right? Because training camp is over, and it's like, you in your mind, at least I think, oh, training camp's over, the regular season's almost there. We're still a month away. So with that, as we look at all of these pieces, right? I mean, at least with any official designation, the worst that you've had is week to week with guys like Mike Edwards and Cole Bishop.
Yeah.
So that's fine. So if they want to be cautious with guys, I'm okay with that. I think even when it comes to some players, like I'm not saying anyone that's projected to be a starter, but sometimes with those depth players, like, hey, maybe Justin Shorter ends up on injured reserve to start the season. Kind of buy
Yeah.
a little bit more time to stash somebody that you're hoping to see something more from. I mean, KJ Hamler, I have a little bit higher expectations for based on the last few days, but with some of that, there's some of these positions that there's a little bit of a log jam. So maybe if someone's kind of nicked up a little bit here and there, that might not be the worst thing when it comes to some of these guys that might be towards the bottom of the roster that you want to stash away.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely wide receiver too. We're talking 3 wide receivers that are on that list. Actually 4 if you want to count Justin Shorter too. So it's the wide receiver list alone. Some of these bottom end roster guys are definitely going to get some opportunities. It's been kind of weird at camp too, being a Bills fan and following this team, talking about this team on this podcast since 2018. It's been weird going to camp and looking at Bills jerseys with numbers of players who is not them. Like like Chase Claypool's out there, he's wearing 14 every day. It feels kind of weird. Used to seeing Trey pipping out 27. Now it's Kareem Jackson. Mac Hollins is wearing Gabe's old number, 13. Keenan Bills. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I've barely even seen him out there at all. I think he's like kind of like mixed in with the third unit on the offensive line. But anyway, he's wearing Mitch Morse's number, man. It's just change. A big offseason to change. You know what, though? You know what number is still not been issued that's still out there? 23. Micah Hyde. I'm just saying, ain't nobody got 23 right now, Anthony.
You know what? It's so interesting with that. And it's funny. We were talking before we started recording, right? Jerry Ostrowski was on, we used to be teammates over at Buffalo Rumblings together. And Jerry was talking. He said, listen, if I am Micah Hyde, he's like, I will stand outside of the Bills training facility. And he goes, I will keep him from going in until it's like a week before the start of the regular season.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing here, but Jerry, he was on with John Fina and he was right. Like there's no reason for him to go to Rochester, no reason for him to play in a preseason game. Like if he wants to come back, that's fine. But it's like, you do it on your terms. You've been through enough training camps. You've earned it. If it's something where you want to come back, like, right around Labor Day weekend is when you should probably start to keep an eye out and think to yourself, hey, if some of these injuries are lingering, like even with the other signings the Bills made at safety, to me, that's just like, listen, you got to get through preseason games. You have to get through training camp practices. I'm not saying these guys can't, show something or be, potential players for you or this and that. But I didn't look at either of those moves and think to myself, oh, there's no way Micah Hyde is coming back because, again, taking the sage advice from Jerry Ostrowski, if he's going to come back, it should be around September 1st.
Burgess, Kareem Jackson are 2 safeties that were signed. They just feel to me, from what I've seen, and maybe the preseason will change some minds, but they just feel like camp bodies. As to Mike Hyde, yeah, I agree 100%. There's no way he's going to come to the Bills, especially during St. John's Fisher portion of camp. It just would be almost pointless for him. But I'll say this, if camp went as the 3-headed battle that we saw early on anyway, between Bishop and Edwards and Hamlin, then you don't need DeMar or Micah Hyde on this team. But 2 of those guys are down, and Cole Bishop might not be back for the start of the season, or if he is, he's just going to be getting back. And he's a rookie, and that does matter. Micah Hyde don't need training camp. Cole Bishop could have used every rep he could possibly get. Mike Edwards has missed most of offseason activities because of injuries. Shoulder now the hamstring. And I kind of locked in on him moving around a little bit. Monday, he looked really ginger slow. I talked about this on the show. Watched him again today on Thursday. He's moving around a little bit better, but I don't think he's really he's probably going to miss another, I would say, at least 2 weeks. I'd be willing to bet. So the path to wanting Micah Hyde to come back, if there is a path, if the Bills want him back, or if he wants to come back, the path seems like it's going to be there in the next couple weeks.
Yeah. And again, like we don't really know the extent of things with Cole Bishop or Mike Edwards. I mean, anytime it's a hamstring injury, right, those things can linger or something that can flare up, pretty quickly. So that one has me a little bit concerned. But, and I'll say this too, like, I can feel a little bit optimistic about DeMar Hamlin right now and what he's been doing. Like, I don't say that meaning like, oh, I see him being an all-pro or a Pro Bowler or any of those things, but just like, all right, you can be okay in that scenario. So
Sure.
I'm all right with where things are right now, but I would like some more clarity on things with Bishop and Edwards, at least over next week and a half.
Another noteworthy item that come from Sean's Thursday presser is Bobby Babich. So earlier in the week, Bobby Babich said he was going to be in the press box for the season, which kind of gave a lot of people an indication that he's going to be calling plays. Well, he is going to be calling plays on Saturday. I mean, Sean didn't say this is our play caller for 2024 yet, but the fact that he's calling the plays on Saturday, I think is by far the strongest indication that come week one, it's going to be Bobby Babich, which I'd be wrong about then. I thought it was going to be Sean this year, and I'm glad to be wrong. Apparently, I'm going to be wrong. Anyway, I'm not going to bother asking you if you're surprised about Bobby Babich calling plays, but this is something you're on board with, right?
Oh yeah, I'm on board with it, and it's a lot of times I will take my cues from Sal Capaccio. Sal is trusted a source that is out there, and I think when Sal talks about things, and it's like, listen, when Bobby Babich decided to come back to the Bills, and his name was bantered around with the Packers and the Dolphins and the Giants, like it's like, yeah, I don't think he's just coming back if he's not going to be the one calling plays. I mean, I do think McDermott's probably playing a little bit coy here with things right now. Like, these coaches will look for any sort of misdirection or ability to take someone off the scent if they can. So honestly, to me, it's a little annoying. Just like, listen, man, if he's going to call the plays, like announce that he's calling the plays, like, let everyone move on with the rest of their life. So I'm excited for it, the way that the guys kind of react to him and the coach that he is. And I hope he does some great things on Saturday.
This is not a knock whatsoever on Leslie Frazier. I was a big Leslie Frazier fan. I admire Leslie Frazier greatly. A great man, great defensive coordinator, great career coaching in the NFL. But the body language and demeanor at training camp, the difference between Leslie Frazier out there calling plays and communicating with his players versus Bobby Babich is night and day. Bobby Babich is out there running around like he's playing right now. You can see how much more, even from the stands. On Monday or today, on Thursday, I should say, I was all the way up at the top of the bleachers. Because if I'm not going to be able to get on the field, work my way to the field by sweet talking a couple of people, I like to be up all the way in the stands because you could see every single little thing up there. So I love that. So that's where I was on Thursday. Monday, right at the track where the field is, which is cool because you're up close and you can hear a Lancela, but sometimes it can be harder to see what's actually going on. But anyway, my point is this: Bobby Babich is an animated dude. And again, there's no disrespect to Leslie. Leslie has his own style, and I absolutely love Leslie Frazier. But Bobby Babich is just he's a ball of energy. Yeah, I kind of feel like you could see that with the defensive players. Like the difference for me between this camp and the last couple, I would say the defense, well, there's lots of differences, but one of them is just I sense the defensive energy with these guys. It just feels a lot more loose and getting after and a lot more animated, a lot more vocal. And I know Bobby Babich is behind a lot of that.
No, I mean, there's reason to be excited with him as defensive coordinator. And again, I'm a huge Leslie Frazier fan. So that's like no disrespect, like you said. And I think in some ways, like with some of the turnover that they've had, maybe you need your coordinator to bring a little bit of that juice and a little bit of that energy. You're losing some of the leadership that had been in place before when you think about that. So it's like, okay, maybe your DC needs to bring a little bit of that swagger to the sideline for you. And it sounds like he's doing that so far.
Yeah. By the way, you could take a magic marker and write this down. Terrell Bernard's going to be defensive captain for this football team. I'm going to tell you that right now. He's you could just sense it. You could see it. Confidence with Terrell Bernard, the way he's communicating, moving. Obviously, physically, we all know what he is now, but he's going to be a captain on this team. Two quick national notes. Then I want to kind of dive into some camp takeaways and overall stuff for training camp this year for the Bills. We've seen a lot of national skepticism, pessimism about this team. And we kind of, some of it's clickbait, to get people like you and I to talk about it on shows like this. Some of it is just, I think they genuinely think this is a down year for the Bills. So it was nice to see on Thursday, actually a pair of national media folk really talking up this team. Pete Prisco's been from CBS Sports. He's been at practice the last couple of days at camp with the Bills. And he tweeted out that he thinks Dalton Kincaid by the end of the season could be in the conversation for being the top tight end in the entire NFL. He said that on Thursday. And then Mina Kimes, who doesn't love Mina Kimes, man? Everyone does. She's awesome. Anyway, she was on ESPN First Take on Thursday, a show that I generally don't like talking about on this podcast. But she was talking about the Buffalo Bills, and she's really high on this offense. And, you know, once you get past the growing pains and learning stuff, Mina said that by the back half of the season, that she wouldn't be surprised if the Bills are one of, if not the best offense in the entire league. Some pretty strong endorsements on Thursday of the Buffalo Bills from the national perspective.
Yeah, but from a national perspective, if you listen to the reporters that put the work in, I'm choosing my words carefully here, right? It's like, well, you know, I mean, there's some, and we talk about it a lot of times. Like, listen, there's 32 teams in the league, right? Like, you can't be studying 32 teams to that extent. And then there's some people that 365 days a year, they do put in the work. Mina Kimes is one of those people. Pete Prisco has always had a reputation for being one of those people. So when you go through and you look at it, and it's like, you know, you think Robert Mays on the Athletic podcast, right? Again, when he talks about, you know, top 10 offenses for this upcoming season, recognizes that the Bills will be in that mix. Like when you go to the folks that are not just looking to create a clip for Instagram or on Twitter or to, you know, do anything to just rile up some conversation. And we know there's people that do that, right? That's part of the business that engages in conversation. Usually I try to avoid that stuff. But the smart people that are out there will tell you that the Buffalo Bills are still one of the top offenses. Josh Allen is still their quarterback. What they've done, yes, Stephon Diggs might be gone, but these other pieces that they have, what they have in place, Dalton Kincaid poised to have a breakout season. So it's like, yeah, if that national buzz from, again, more of the talking head types isn't there, I'm completely fine with that because that's usually what I avoid anyway. But if someone like Mina Kimes and Robert Mays and Pete Prisco, those are the types of folks that I end up gravitating towards. And it's not like, oh, they said something nice about the Bills, so I'm going to listen to it. It's just because they are smart analysts with what they do. And so that shouldn't come as a surprise.
Let's take a real quick break. Come back. I want to get into some specific takeaways from, and again, I was there in Rochester on Thursday, so specific takeaways from the Bills' final day at camp, and then kind of some overall. I got a list that I want to go over with you, guys who I think stock rose and maybe fell the most over the last couple weeks at camp. Okay, I'm back here with Anthony Marino talking about the conclusion now of Buffalo Bills camp. Real quick, by the way, I want to point this out. I don't think I told you this because we haven't talked in a couple weeks. So I had Joe Marino on the show not long ago. We did a show at Sunny Reds when he was in town. Gotta tell you this was off camera, but we were just talking about a variety of other shows and people and stuff like that. A big fan of yours, man. He gave you some really, really good props, man. Talk about you just being a good guy, a smart guy, a thoughtful guy, somebody who thinks before he talks. Nice little fresh energy that you bring. So I want to make sure I let you know that Joe spoke very, very highly of you specifically. I bring that up because I'm not going to talk about Josh Allen over the next, portion of this podcast. But Joe said that Josh Allen has been the MVP of camp and has looked the best he has throughout his entire career. We take Josh for granted and kind of doing that right now as I'm just glancing over him. But I wanted to throw that out there. I got takeaways that are not Josh Allen takeaways because we could spend every single day talking about the good, the bad, the ugly of Josh Allen. But yeah, man, Joe threw some major props over to you, man. He's a big fan of yours.
Well, I'm a big fan of his, and it's just honestly, we joke a lot because I'm like the big brother, little brother type of thing. I'm much older than Joe, and no, we are not related. For those of you thinking that we might be, but I am like incredibly proud of what he has built as, kind of this Locked On Bills empire, but everything else that he does. And honestly, like, when he talks about the show and he's like, welcome to our everydayers. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. I'm his everydayer. Like, I do not miss an episode for what he does. And, you talk about someone that brings a level of calm and civility and knowledge and passion to a fan base that sometimes we have our highs and lows that comes to that. He's fantastic. And to the point about Josh Allen, it is funny when you think of like how far we've come, that it used to be like every day of training camp. I mean, right, Joe Biscaglia used to put out statistics of like, hey, in 11-on-11 drills, Josh Allen, tough day, 14 for 24 today, blah, blah, blah. Like all these things, like you would wait for those updates to come out because you just were looking for some glimmer of hope of like, this is going to be the guy. Now it's like, oh, Josh threw 3 interceptions today in practice. Like, whatever, no big deal. Like, I'm sure they were working on something, trying something different. So I know you said you don't want to talk about Josh Allen, but it just, it's fun to think how far we've all come.
Yeah, and he looked great. And again, he looked great. The least of my concerns about this football team, I promise you this, is Josh Allen. He's ready to play some football. Here's my biggest takeaway from camp. And by the way, if you don't know, on Thursday, no pads. It was almost kind of like a walkthrough. It wasn't like most of the practices wasn't even 100%. It was like 75, 80% speed as well. Quite frankly, from a fan perspective, it was pretty boring. Not going to lie to you. Monday was crowd piped in noise day too. It's kind of a shitty week for the fans here at St. John's Fisher. But anyway, I do have one takeaway, and one takeaway only to me that really, truly matters. So every time I've went to camp or talked to other people that are there on a day-to-day basis, but especially when I was there, because I was there 3 different days at 3 different points of camp, I was locked in on Matt Milano. Don't give a shit if he makes a play or not. I couldn't care less. But I cared about how he looked. And I'm telling you, today, Thursday, he was out there for every single defensive 11-on-11 first team snap. He blitzed off the edge. He was out in the flats and coverage. I'm not going to sit here and say, because I'm no doctor, I can't say this definitively, that he's 100%. But I'm going to tell you this right now. For the first time, because I've been a little worried, this is the first day after being at camp on Thursday where I feel comfortably confident that as long as he has those setbacks, Matt Milano is, if he's not all the way ramped up, he's really close. He looked good, man. He looked fast, quick, decisive, cut quick. I feel really good about Matt Milano. Even forget the regular season. If he's going to play on Saturday, I feel good about him right now going into Saturday.
Well, and that's good to hear. I mean, listen, I try to avoid, the little breakdowns that you see on social media, of just like, oh, was he able to plant enough here? That, like, okay, we're over a month away from the start of the regular season. The guy coming back from, an injury that cost him so much time last year, that's fine. But it's, I don't want to be the guy that's just like, oh, if it's something negative, I dismiss it. If it's something positive, then I, believe that part. But it's just like to see him progressing. And it seems like that has been the narrative. I mean, listen, it was catastrophic to lose him last year. I mean, let's just be honest, like how important he is to this team. So to have him back, you talk about Terrell Bernard before, that dynamic duo in the middle of your defense, like I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah. By the way, another thing I noticed, I actually tweeted, if you're watching on the video set, I'll throw this up real quick. It's a photograph of Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard coming from the campus before they even get to the practice field. And I've noticed this now being there. Those guys spent a lot of time together, not just like in the huddle or during 11-on-11. It feels like to me like Terrell Bernard is just picking this dude's brain from the locker room to the practice field during drills, everything. I really like the bond it seems that those two are getting. But yeah, on an overall perspective, far and away, what I saw from Matt Milano today was the most encouraging thing at practice. In terms of plays, again, there really wasn't a lot to really talk about, with the exception of one play. And it actually, I saw him, Bills put it out on Twitter. Their video guy caught it. MBS, who I thought had a really shitty first half of camp, I thought potentially he might be playing his way out of a job, and I don't think his job is secure right now. But what the Bills signed him for, you saw on Thursday. He put a move on, got behind, a step behind Christian Benford, and then blew past him. And Josh threw a perfect ball. It would have been a long touchdown. Certainly the play of practice. But yeah, MVS is after a slow start to camp, Anthony, MVS is starting to come on now. This is starting to look like the guy that I was happy that the Bills signed back in May.
Yeah, and it's interesting with him too. Like, I feel like expectations need to be in check for everyone when it comes to him. And it's interesting because, like, listen, when he was signed with the Chiefs, it kind of was with the expectation he was going to be their wide receiver number one. I mean, everyone knows, okay, Travis Kelce, their main weapon that was there, but he came in with some real expectations there. Like, he comes into Buffalo where, all right, it's probably wide receiver 4 at best.
Yeah.
Right. If you're thinking Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, and that's not even getting into anything with the tight ends. And, whether they would play MVS on offense ahead of someone like Mac Hollins, or, what happens with some of the other guys in the mix there, we would wait and see. But, like, listen, for him to play that role, like, if he's going to be on the field with his size and his speed, you have to account for him. And it's not going to be someone that's going to get a high target share, assuming he makes the roster. Not going to be someone that's going to get a ton of playing time, but when he does, he's going to be able to stretch the field. And if he can make a handful of plays like he did today in camp throughout the regular season, that will make things easier for guys like Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel.
Let me run through a couple of like kind of quick notes that I observed at camp that I just want to share. Don't really, I don't want to take up too much time talking about them because I want to save some time to talk about the overall camp, winners and losers and things that I'm looking at that I want to know that you're looking forward to seeing on Saturday. But things that I caught that are worth pointing out. So Hamler's out. Again, don't know what the injury is, but this is shaping up to be a great opportunity for Daquan Hardy to get some action on kick returns, punt returns. And also Andy Isabella was the other guy who was back there as well on at practice on Thursday. So it looks like those are going to be the two guys that are going to return kicks and punts too. It was the same two for punts with Hamler out. And Isabella's gutsy because I was at practice on Monday when he got carted off. And I think the card came out. I talked about this too. Like, it is a long distance from the locker room, the dorm area to the field. So, maybe it wasn't a serious injury, but he was in a lot of pain Monday. I was right there. Like I said, I was right up on the field on Monday, and he was in considerable pain. This is just a dude who knows he cannot miss a practice. You know what I'm saying? He gutsy ass dude, though, man. I give him all the credit in the world for being right back out there just 48 hours later. But anyway, Hardy, Isabella, I think you'll see them Saturday returning kicks. Saw a lot and this is with the number one defense. Later in practice, I think so they had their base 11 early on, their base being their nickel defense. I think in the later segments when they were doing some drills, they kind of had a pass rushing, like a third down maybe defense, because I noticed that Dwayne Smoot and AJ Epinesa were both on the field lining up in the interior as pass rushers. And, Daquan Jones being out, I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, but gives me a sense that I think they're going to keep 4 defensive tackles this year, which is not good news maybe for Deshaun Williams, but you got your starting 2, of course, and then you got the rookie Dwayne Carter and Austin Johnson. I just think that's worth noting that those guys, Epinesa, Smoot, are lining up inside. It tells me that, they might want to save that 5th defensive tackle position for another body somewhere else. Second offensive line unit. And this is the second straight time I've seen this now. Grable, and this is from left to right. Grable, Yale Collins, Alec Anderson, Clapp, and Vandermart. I'm sorry. I think 4 of those 5 are locked. Maybe Collins versus Clapp for one veteran spot because Granger's on the 3rd team, but he's going to make this team. Are you a little concerned about the offensive line depth right now? Like, I just ran off that second unit, and those guys don't really have any real experience other than Collins, who's kind of getting up there in age and has been banged up. They didn't play last year.
No, I'm not too concerned because Collins, again, has that experience, even though he might be a little bit rusty, kind of see what he brings to the table, right? With Anderson, there's been kind of a positive thoughts around him and what he
Yeah.
brings to the table. Ryan Vandermark, they speak very highly of. So, would it be nice if you had a, David Edwards type that, had that type of experience? I guess that's Lyle Collins, kind of brings that piece of experience to that offensive line for you. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm just feeling too optimistic right now, but it's just like I'm not too concerned with it because, we've seen in the past too, like guys kind of come out of nowhere and all of a sudden it's like, oh, Ryan Bates is pretty good, or this one's pretty good, or that, like there's guys that they've had around that they've kept around. They've made some investments in the draft. And, I mean, heck, we'll see how they look in the preseason. Not that you want to put too much stock in that, but, maybe you'll see like, hey, some of these guys can perform. And if not, I think there's enough time that there's still some veterans out there that you can get someone that's, had some playing experience to come into the mix and, and add a little bit more of a veteran presence to that line as opposed to some of the inexperience.
I would say for people wondering, I think Alec Anderson is pretty much locked in as that 6th offensive lineman. He's Ryan Bates, I think, this year. Alec Anderson will be the first guy off the bench. If your center goes down, he can play guard. He's even played a little bit of tackle, although primarily he's been on the interior, but he could be like that Ryan Bates type. I think that's what's going to be his role. He's also that 6th offensive lineman when the Bills go to that jumbo package. Has been Alec Anderson that's been coming in. And I agree with you 100%, especially at the offensive tackle position. Little bit concerned. Is Vandermark good enough to be the swing tackle if something happens to either starting tackle? If they don't feel, that's one of those few things where I think the preseason is going to matter. How does he look in certain situations? That might determine, like Ryan Vandermark, I feel like he's got a lot to play for right now on the preseason. Grable's a nice project, but he's a 6th-round rookie. Really don't see him being a swing tackle his first year in the league. So, yeah, you bring up a good point. It's possible that they still look outside the organization. Another thing I noticed with Cam Lewis, this dude's like that utility knife guy. And I'm not telling you nothing new. You know what I mean? But just even at practice on Thursday, he played in the slot. He was on the second team slot corner. He played some free safety, played some strong safety. And you can tell he's going to be a core special teams player. Like, I don't know, if you're a guy who buys a jersey, one jersey per year, and you want to make sure you get a year out of it, and you want a different jersey, and you're willing to potentially throw it out after this year, but you want a guy who you're not worried about, is he going to make the team? Like, am I buying a 74 Ryan Vandermark jersey tomorrow, Anthony? I don't know. But I will buy a 39 Cam Lewis jersey because this dude is not going anywhere. He's going to be a part of this team. He might not be a starter, but he's going to be a meaningful player.
We got to talk to you about making some smarter choices with your money. Just I'm not a proponent of buying jerseys of players like that are, rock solid on the roster, let alone Cam Lewis. But all kidding aside, it has been a lot of fun to see the pro that he has become, right? I mean, from someone that you think like, okay, undrafted free agent out of University of Buffalo. Oh, is this just kind of like a courtesy, right? From the crosstown, Division I program to have someone come and be on the 90-man roster. And it's just like, no, for what he has done, that flexibility, his ability to play special teams, like great for him. And, and then with other guys too, like Jamarcus Ingram, it's like, okay, you might have 2 UB Bulls on the 53-man roster.
Be nice.
Both as undrafted free agents. Like, that's a seems like a unique type of situation, but it is nice to see. And for Cam Lewis, it's great to see just, again, how he's progressed.
Let me be clear about something, by the way. I have not bought a Buffalo Bills jersey with my own money since Eric Moulds. I got a Josh Allen jersey. My daughter gave it to me as a gift. I have a Dante Whitner jersey that a friend of mine gave to me as a gag gift because he knows how much Dante Whitner and I love each other. And I had a CJ Spiller jersey given to me by somebody else when he was there. I don't remember. But the last Bills, I agree with you. I will buy a Bills hoodie, Bills t-shirt, Bills polo shirt, anything Bills before I spend money on jerseys because they never end up being worth it. If you're going to get one, I suppose you go get yourself a Kelly jersey or Thurman because, Reed, those are lifetimers at this point. Anyway, one last takeaway from Thursday's camp specifically. Maybe to say nothing, because again, it was kind of at the end of the day. I don't want to say a walkthrough, it was a run through. But one thing I did notice, Ray Davis was getting a lot of run with the ones. It was almost like he played maybe as many snaps with the ones as James Cook. It almost felt like a rotation between those guys. Like Keon Coleman, Matt Collins, that's been a rotation throughout camp. You know what I'm saying? But like with Cook, it's been Cook, and then when Cook's done, then Davis comes in. I mean, we heard about practice, or James Cook's had a couple drops during camp. He had one a bad or one drop and one knockdown or fumble, I should say, on Wednesday. I wonder if Ray Davis is on the verge of, maybe we were a little premature to call James Cook the bell cow, or like we had to did a show about him potentially running for 1,500 yards. Might want to pump the brakes on that dude. I don't know,
I mean, you
man.
might want to pump the brakes, but you know what? Ray Davis is having his own issues holding on to the football as well. So, a few too many reports of him putting the ball on the ground, which I don't love. So that kind of makes that position as a whole a little bit more concerning for me than I would like it to be. So I hope it's just a practice thing and maybe a lack of concentration situation, and not something that becomes an issue during the regular season. But, listen, you need that 1-2 punch. We've said that in the past. It hasn't really worked out, right? Where you haven't had, really Zach Moss in many ways being the player you wanted him to be. You see flashes of that, and of course the success he had with the Colts last season. But I just want these guys to hold on to the ball, to be quite honest. And James Cook, let's clean it up. Let's get ourselves in a good spot, and then we can talk in a few months about hey, is he gonna get 2,000 all-purpose yards or not, or something crazy and ridiculous like that.
I think, it would be nice to see that Singletary Zach Moss combo, what we wanted it to be. Like maybe that can be it this year. I talked about this yesterday too. One thing that has impressed me about Ray Davis, which I think helps his case a lot, is every time I've seen him in pass blocking drills, he's looked really good. He got beat by Dorian Williams on one rep on Wednesday or on Monday. But that aside, he has looked really solid. And if he can prove himself as a pass blocker, I could see him having that Latavius Murray 2023 role with this team. When Cook comes out, the guy who could catch the ball out of the backfield, who could block and also give you the tough yards, kind of feels like it has a Ray Davis written all over it. So that'll be another thing to look forward to starting on Saturday. Terms of camp overall, and I put this out on yesterday being Thursday. This was before the last practice, but I don't think anything's changed. I got a list of my 5 biggest risers and fallers. 5 people who I think their stock rose the most throughout the entirety of camp. This isn't about Thursday. And then 5, I think, whose stock has fallen the most. Although one of them I might want to amend, and we'll talk about that in a second. But my 5 biggest risers, not necessarily in specific order, but I want to get some thoughts from you on maybe one or two of these guys. But it's Tyrell Shavers, it's Matt Collins, it's Damar Hamlin, it's Kyer Elam, and it's Zach Davidson. Those to me are 5 guys who their stock right now is better to significantly better than it was on day 1 of camp in late July.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with any of those. And that's honestly, as you went through, all good fits. I mean, there's other guys that have definitely flashed or maybe shown certain things, but maybe the expectations were even a little bit higher for, other names that I'm thinking of. And I mean, the one that came to mind for me is just Keon Coleman, right? Of just and I say that of, oh, is this guy a project? I don't know. He's a fun personality, but at least for what we've seen in training camp so far, it's just hands have been good rapport with Josh Allen, high pointing the ball, going up and coming down with it, good body control, all of those pieces. But, to your list, I mean, I would just highlight Kyer Elam. I've said it so many times on this show before, but I just want to see the young man do well. It just, for what he's gone through, clean slate. I realize it's just training camp. That doesn't really mean a ton right now, but it seems like his confidence is in a good place. It seems like the team's confidence in him is in a good spot, and just, something where you would look at and say, okay, the starters seem great. After that, I'm not quite sure. That seems to have been put to bed, at least for right now, based on his performance. And I hope, hope he gets things right.
He's just been so much more consistent this year than last year. And that's a glaring thing that I noticed. I'm going to go back to Keon Coleman. Here's where I'm at with him right now. I'm kind of in the middle with Keon Coleman. He has made good plays. He's caught the ball. I think he's going to be a good player. He's going to be fine. Like I don't have any criticisms. There's nothing about anything I've seen from him at camp that would make me critical of him, but he might have to wait his turn. Yeah, I don't know that he's going to be a guy that's going to come out and get 6-7 targets a game week 1 against Arizona. I'm telling you, man, Samuel and Shakir, those are your top two. That's become apparent to me at camp right now. Those two guys are going to be on the field the most. And I feel like to start this season, Matt Collins is going to get a lot of run in 3 receiver sets because he's a veteran. The Bills like him, and he's a good blocker. And now MVS could be coming on. Keon Coleman, I like him, and he'll be good. But dude, I'm starting to think he might have to wait his turn. So people out there are expecting, this first month of the season barrage of big Keon Coleman plays. It might not come. Might be a red zone guy or, a chain mover at times, but I think you're going to have some patience with Keon Coleman.
Well, and as I say it too, and I do think my expectations are, I don't even want to say in check, right? Like I think, but when I talk about him, it's almost like, okay, is he going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 to 50 catches this year?
Right.
He's probably going to have 3 or 4 that you're going to be like, holy crap. Like, did you see what he did in that game? There'll be Sports Center top 10 type of highlights. And maybe in that game, it's his only catch, right? But it's something that's definitely gonna make you say, wow. And he's probably going to have 1 or 2 games where he's able to somewhat go like bananas that you're just going to be like, okay, there it is. And I realize you might be listening right now or watching this and saying, you just described Gabriel Davis. That's not what we're looking for at this point. But I think when you talk about as a rookie to be able to show that, to have more of the consistency, maybe to have better hands, right? Like, some of those things with it. But that's kind of my expectations for his rookie year, because there are going to be other guys that can do more. It doesn't all have to fall on his shoulders.
I going to those 5 guys on my risers list quickly here. Talked a little bit about Elam. I went into camp thinking, I hope he plays well enough that the Bills can feel good enough about him to be their Dane Jackson, their third corner if something happens to a starter. As I sit here and talk to you on Thursday night, I think Kyrie Elam, if Christian Benford happens to slip up or at all, Kyrie Elam could still be in the mix to start at this point. And I feel good enough.
A year ago, we're saying to ourselves, like, what can you get for him? Maybe a 5th round or 6th round draft pick. If you're going to trade him, if he's going to be inactive, if he's going to be all these things, like, thank God the Buffalo Bills are a bit more patient than the fan bases.
A lot of times people have good camps and then it doesn't amount to anything. I don't think that's the case with Kyrie Elam. I think I feel, based on what I've seen at least, I feel like the light might have clicked in his head. And I think you're going to see a better Kyrie Elam going forward consistently as well. Matt Collins, I talked about him on the list. You could tell this team likes him a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a captain on this team right now. And he's going to be a core special teams player as well. DeMar Hamlin, his stock rises. He's looked fine. I haven't seen nothing bad about DeMar, but his stock rises more out of default because his competition went down. So he's pretty much, as of now anyway, I would say almost pegged in to be the week 1 starter. Shavers and Zach Davidson, look, every year, I'm sure with every team, you always have 1 or 2 really fun camp stories. And you go into the preseason, you're like, man, Zach Davidson, you can make the decision real tough. Will the Bills keep 4 tight ends? And, Shavers is outplaying MVS, and are they going to keep him over MVS? Which, by the way, the answer to both of those is yes, it's possible. But you always get a couple guys who just kind of fade off as the preseason goes on and then roster cuts come. Might be them, but Shavers and Davidson have earned a legitimate opportunity to make this roster right now.
No, absolutely. I mean, and what's different with them compared to Kyrie Elam, like we've seen flashes from Kyrie Elam, right, in the playoffs, in the regular season before. We've seen inconsistency, but we've seen him make plays in big spots. So you can say like, okay, I know it's there. With Shavers and Davidson, it's just different because they haven't had those opportunities yet. So your OTAs, your mandatory mini camps, your training camps can all be good. Everyone's saying so many positive things about them, right? Like it makes me think that they're more than just a camp darling, but along those same lines, right? Like what happens when the lights are on? we'll find out. But for right now, two good guys to keep on the list.
I'll say this real quick with Shavers. If Hardy looks good returning kicks and wins the kick returning job, then I think Shavers stays and Hamler doesn't. Hamler wins the job. I don't think you have room to have Hamler and Shavers both on your roster. So we'll see how that plays out. I like Zach Davison, smooth ass tight end. Just keeping 4 tight ends is a lot. And Quentin Morris is a core special teams player on a team that lost a couple core special teams players last off season. All right, fallers. These are 5 guys whose stock has fallen since the start of camp. Some of these injury related. Mike Edwards is one for me. MVS, I had him on my list yesterday, so I got to stay with that. But trending up after Thursday, I really liked him getting deep. That looked good. La'el Collins, Chase Claypool, and Casey Toohill. Which, by the way, do you even remember that they signed Casey Toohill? I'm talking about somebody who had a quiet ass camp. Again, various reasons, but any of those stick out to you? 5 guys whose stock has plummeted to some extent since the start of camp, at least anyway.
No, I mean, plummeted might be too strong of a term, right? When it kind of comes to this in my mind, but guys that let's just say had an opportunity and haven't made the most of it. And I think that's the case right now. And, with some, you talk about Mike Edwards, you talk about Chase Claypool. Okay. Injuries are injuries, right? That kind of takes you out of the mix. Unfortunately, that's a bit out of your control. La'el Collins, that's someone that, per our conversation before, you kind of need him to be good. He's got some flexibility with positions he can play. He brings some of that, veteran experience. But listen, if you're not going to cut it, you're not going to cut it. So, I think that certainly makes sense to be on the list. Casey Toohill. I mean, it's interesting with him. Don't take this the wrong way. That one feels like a little bit of a stretch, and probably because he was signed early in free agency. But I mean, he was signed early and with a vet minimum with very little guaranteed money that made it seem like, okay, yeah, he had 5 sacks last season, but then you get somebody in the draft, you had some other guys, and all of a sudden it's just he's kind of an afterthought. But I mean, here's a guy that I think if you can get him on the practice squad, that's a real plus for you based on the experience that he's had and what he's done on special teams. But, that one I felt like was a little rough.
A little reach in there. I had to reach hard. You know what? I'll tell you what. Kick him off that list. Let's put Nick Morrow on that list. Nick Morrow's a linebacker they signed from Philly. Again, got him injuries. He really hasn't done anything at camp. And I think he finds himself now in a legitimate fight to make this roster. Mike Edwards for me is probably number 1. And again, this is all because of injury, but I felt confident this entire offseason. When they signed Edwards, I'm like, I think he's a pretty good starting free safety, but we're not getting to see it. And he's been hurt multiple times. His stock is plugged. Hell, even if they both come back at the same time, at this point, Cole Bishop, they just might put Cole Bishop in there ahead of both of them.
Well, and you didn't make a major investment in Mike Edwards. And here's a guy that he has starting experience, but really because other guys went down, with injuries, and he had the opportunity to step up, and he did. And hey, good for him. He's got a couple Super Bowl rings, and you deserve it. That's fantastic. But yeah, it's a position where, okay, they sign you on a $2-point-something million contract. You still have DeMar Hamlin on the roster, who's been there and has played and was a 15-game plus starter in the absence of Micah Hyde and performed pretty well in that situation. And then they go out and they, invest a 2nd-round pick in Cole Bishop. So it's it doesn't, that's a 3-way competition that it doesn't take much for you to fall out of favor in that pecking order. And if you can't be on the field, then, you can't prove that you deserve the shot.
Chase Claypool just never materialized. It's unfortunate he gets injured early and he just hasn't had an opportunity, which has given an opportunity to guys like especially Shavers to really shine. Collins is a guy, my gut tells me he's going to get cut. I don't love what I'm seeing. Plus, he's a veteran. If you cut him, you could get him back on the practice squad. I don't think there's going to be another team that wants to send any rush to claim La'el Collins off the waiver wire. He does have the veteran experience, so I mean, it's not a conclusion, but I don't see him making a team anyway. All right, so Saturday we got a game now. Finally, got a game. Let me ask you this: Starters are playing now for a quarter. So are you actually even watching the game? A lot of Bills fans out there, big Bills fans, who sometimes just don't like getting in the preseason. But week 1 preseason, Saturday afternoon, you plan on watching?
You know what? If I was available, I would 100% be watching. Have a family commitment at that time, which would
Okay.
keep me from, watching the game. It's like, listen, regular season games, I can sort of, say with certain things like, listen, the Bills play at 1:00. Like,
I ain't missing that
I
shit.
gotta take care of this, and we'll figure it out, or will the game be on, or that type of thing. But for the first preseason game, probably later that night, I'll catch the replay on NFL.com and see what's up. But yeah, under normal circumstances, though, I would definitely be watching.
All right. Well, sorry. So you're not going to be able to watch the game, and you're certainly going to be following afterwards, reading up on and listening to, watching some stuff. What are a couple things that you're looking forward to seeing, or I should say hearing about, after the fact? Like, what are a couple things that you're most locked in on when it comes to the Bills going into this first preseason game?
Yeah, and again, I know I'm in the minority here, but it's like, yeah, I want to see the starting offense do a couple things. And I just mean that of like, even if it's, hey, Josh Allen to Keon Coleman to Curtis Samuel to Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid. I mean, I've seen that before. And I don't even know why I say that. Like, it shouldn't make a difference in any way, shape, or form. But for the fan base, it'll be that one play. Here's the clip that's online. Like, it just kind of gets you a little excited, and that's it. It just feels like, in a way, for it to become real. I know that sounds kind of weird, but it's like, this is that time of year where it's a little different this year because we do have the Olympics that have been on to kind of, I think, fill the void and keep you engaged with something. But traditionally, this is that time of year where it's like, my gosh, give me a preseason football game, please. Like, I don't watch baseball. I can't do this. Where usually you kind of have that just a little bit. So, I mean, that's like the obvious piece, but I mean, more, I think, to the heart of your question, Balin Spector, Dorian Williams, Kyer Elam, Jamarcus Ingram. Those 4 guys that I look at and just say, 3 of the 4 I think are a lock for the roster. Balin Spector, I'm not so sure about, but it's like, it's things like that to see like, hey, who can make that next step? Because I think over these past couple of years, you think to a year ago with a Terrell Bernard, you think of James Cook making that next step. You look at some of those types of pieces. It's like, okay, these guys will be primed now to maybe step into more of a primetime type of, not even primetime type of role based on the depth and what it's there, but just to see like, oh yeah, this is an investment that was worth making.
For those are great players, great choices. For what it's worth, too, Balin Spector to this point through camp has been the backup Mike. Like, he's been the backup to Terrell Bernard. I think he's in pretty good shape going into the preseason, but we'll see what happens.
I got one more too.
Go ahead.
I want to see Tyler Bass kick a field goal and just sort of like split the uprights and have it look the way it should, and not kind of put some of that to bed. I don't expect the guy to be perfect, but it sounds like from camp there's definitely been a bit more question marks than I'd like from our kicker.
I'm glad you brought that up. There seems to be a sense of uneasiness about Tyler Bass. Now, I have no idea. Does this extend to Tyler Bass? Does this extend to the actual Buffalo Bills themselves? No clue. And I'm not going to pretend that I know that. But in the stands, the fans, the media, I've talked to plenty of them, seems to be an uneasiness about Tyler Bass. So, yeah, man, seeing him start to get right in the preseason would be really cool. What I want to see and what I'm going to see are going to be 2 different things. Like, what's going to happen is probably going to be Shane Buechele handing the ball off in between the tackles to Darrington Evans about 15 times in the second half and then running the clock out. So you're going to probably see a ton of that. I am interested in seeing the kickoffs. I've never seen. So the whole big game was last week. I missed that. I didn't watch it. I don't know if anything happened on it, but I've never seen the kickoff with the new kickoff rules. So I'm looking. I saw some at practice today on Thursday. It looks to me, dude, there's going to be opportunities for kick returns. Like, special teams matters now. Special teams is back if you're a special teamer. So if Hardy ends up working out, it'll be a genius draft pick to get him in the 6th round, man. But anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out, how it works, how they execute it, how they cover it. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing Ray Davis too. Ray Davis is a physical runner in between the tackles, and at camp, pads, no pads, you're not quite going, you're not trying to lay somebody out. Nobody's trying to take Ray Davis's head off at training camp. Someone from Chicago might try to take Ray Davis's head off. I want to see him when the bullets are completely real. Is this the kind of running back that may be what we talked about earlier in the show here? Singletary, Moss, like that legit good platoon. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he looks against another football team. And I think this will be our first real indication of what he could be. And then the other thing, and it's just boring, but I want to look at the second offensive line unit. How do they look? Just blocking again, one-on-one, because safety is the obvious question, which again, you could be getting into Micah Hyde territory pretty soon. But I think low-key offensive line depth is a potential issue with this football team. And I want to see how Anderson and Vandemart and Will Clapp and Grable's going to get some action, I'm sure, too. Collins. I want to see how that second, and maybe Van Granger as well. I want to see how they look. You know what I mean? The offensive line, vanilla or not, I need to start seeing something from them because I'm a little bit concerned about that unit.
Look how far we've come when what Pat Moran is looking for in a preseason football game is the second string offensive line.
It's the perfect segue to get the hell off this episode because once we start talking about the backup offensive line being something that we're looking forward to watching, it's time to put a wrap on a show, which we're going to do right now. So thank you very much, everybody out there, as always, for watching and for listening. And thank you very much, Anthony Marino. Good to have you back on, man. It really, truly is. I'm happy to be able to talk with you.
Good to be back, brother.
All right. And I'll tell you what, probably going to do a post-game live episode, maybe an hour or so after the game on Saturday. But for sure, we'll be back with new episodes starting on Monday. Enjoy the weekend. And to honor Joe Marino, I'm going to say it one time. I never say it. Go Bills.